Thank you, listeners, for joining. Today, I'm with Nicole again and McKenna, and Nicole will introduce McKenna. So please go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So I met McKenna because we both are graduates of our master's program at University of Alcalá. It's outside Madrid, and we met each other through the cohort. And we have a lot in common. Like, she's an English teacher. I taught English abroad as well. She lived abroad in Colombia and Argentina. I also lived abroad in a few different countries, such as Thailand, South Korea, Mexico, and then recently Spain. So we definitely do have that common ground between us. And she has a really inspiring story. So I'm really excited to be able to hear her share more about her journey and how she was able to come to Spain and how she is able to, prosper and whatnot. Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, McKenna.
Good. Thank you so much for the kind words. Well, like Nicole said, during the master program, I was actually doing it online from the Canary Islands. So we actually got connected through the WhatsApp group, and that's how we started chatting, and then we met up a few times. And I had been dreaming of doing a master's degree in Spain pretty much since my undergrad about 10 years ago, because graduate school in the US is very expensive, and I didn't want to get myself more in debt when there wasn't any guarantees of a job afterwards. And I wanted to do it in Spain because I wanted to learn about the culture and everything. For years, though, I couldn't figure out how to make it happen. So instead, I studied abroad in Argentina, and then I was volunteering and teaching in Colombia for a few years. During that time, though, I always was looking at programs and basically ways to get myself in Spain. And when I came to Spain, actually, I was teaching business English. And I came in August of 2019. And then when 2020 happened, I was kind of stuck there. And that's actually what got me into using technology in education, because previously I had used it in my in-person classes. But when basically there was a lockdown in Madrid and I couldn't even leave my apartment except to go to the grocery store, in order to teach my business English classes, I had to learn how to use different platforms such as mostly Google Meets and Zoom. I use BlueJeans with one student as well, the company platform too. And then even during my first year, there were some times where I had to use these platforms to teach from my home because my roommates were getting sick and I had to quarantine with them. And then basically throughout the years, I've continued to add in more technology into my in-person classes, such as, using Kahoots, Bamboozle, a lot of gamification, also other types of technology like social media to help them learn English and to help their communication skills. And just overall, I really enjoy using technology in my classes. I feel like it helps students develop the 21st century skills, which is what they need. And it's a great way to get their attention. And plus, technology isn't going away. So you can either embrace it or avoid it. And I find when you embrace it, it really helps students not only learn more English, but it helps them become more motivated. And then you're teaching them more skills too, like how to use this technology well, how to use it in a smart way, which is another skill that we need to be teaching.
So can you say, with this crisis of the COVID virus, there came a spark in the school with using the technology? I mean, I have seen at that time children doing exercise at home, running around in front of the computer. I mean, it was not amazing, but it was something evolving that teaching supposed to continue, but it couldn't because the kids couldn't go to school. So, I mean, what happened then after? I mean, as I said, this became a spark because I understood that you said they became more interested now with technology because it was more cool or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, luckily when the lockdown happened, I was teaching adults. So luckily, again, having them run around wasn't so much of an issue, although there were lots of background noises because everybody was at home. Again, it definitely was a learning curve. I think it depends on the students. Some students work really well with technology. I think students who are really shy and introverted and do better without a lot of stimulation can really thrive in these environments. Students who are more extroverted, who are more kinesthetic learners, I think it could be more challenging. And also it depends too on the support they're getting from parents at home as well. If they have parents who can be there to support them, I think it'll be easier, to stay focused in these classes. If their parents are not always present though, especially with younger ones, it can be challenging to stay focused. And I think teachers have to adapt to that. You can't have a regular 45-minute session, especially when there's so many distractions. So I can't really relate to the teachers or auxiliaries who were teaching in schools and then had to do that. I can't imagine how difficult it must have been as well. But I will say, if again this were to happen again, I think having smaller groups would be best, just because you can personalize it more. In general, smaller groups is better for language classes, but especially online, because having like over 15 or 20 is it's too difficult to personalize instruction.
That makes sense. I have a question. So you said that like you use social media in terms like your teaching method and style. So how are you able to incorporate social media when like you're teaching English with your students? Because I've heard like Kahoot, because I use Kahoot as well with my students, and I've used like other gamification apps and so forth. But I never use social media. So can you give me some examples? I'm interested to hear more.
Yeah, well, actually, with my high school kids a couple years ago, I used TikTok for them to make like Christmas TikToks. We didn't upload it because they were all under 18, but I showed them a few examples of Christmas TikToks in English, just to give them an idea. And then they filmed their like TikTok. And by TikTok, I mean like a TikTok style video, because they didn't upload it. We just showed it to the class. And then I made a little contest out of it. We voted for our favorite. Now, I haven't done this either, but I will mention it. One of my colleagues, he taught religion to high school students as well. And he said for a lot of his students, he found a lot of them weren't really engaged in the topic. And even though I don't teach religion, my students will often tell me it's one of their least favorite subjects. So one way method he used to engage the students is they made an Instagram for different people in the Bible. And they would like have different pictures to describe different, Bible stories, and they would write captions. And it's a really good way to practice creativity too. And again, you can really learn about the students too, like, what really speaks to them from these stories they learn about. I think YouTube can be another fun way as well, or making YouTube type like vlog style videos. A lot of it depends on the tools that you have and also the students. Like one challenge with the TikTok assignment that I did this was still during 2021, I believe. So not all parents were comfortable with students working in groups, for example, because, they obviously didn't want, people to be moving around if they didn't have to. So another thing I've used as well is I've shown Super Bowl commercials to students. It's also a really good way to talk about culture. And then I've had them make their own commercials. Again, not uploading it on social media because they're, under 18, but we would show it in class. And I had some girls actually go to the bus station and film the commercial, which was super cute. I had this one student go to like a bedding store, was filming it, and it's really fun. And it's really fun to see, what interests them in their own city as well. So some students get really into it. That being said, not all students are, I guess, as into creative activities. Some students are more logical in how they approach learning. So that's something else to keep in mind. But I will say generally, children love creating things. So I think the more opportunities you give them to create, the better. And technology can be like a super fun way to do that. And often they know, I guess, so much more than me. So they can teach us something too, which I feel like they really enjoy. And my students in general, they love the chance to teach me something. So.
Yeah, I was also going to say, because I've been learning Spanish, so it's like a lot of like TikTok videos in terms of like learning like the terminology, the vocabulary, or like just conversation. So I think that's also really important to be able to be exposed to like how we're conversing another language, and to be able to pause the video, practice as well, and just continue practicing and being exposed to that type of social media, such as TikToks, because I watch a lot of TikToks like on how to learn Spanish, how to be able to perfect the Castellano accent, how to be able to perfect the accent. So I think it's really good, the fact that you're able to use that type of social media, such as TikToks, and even like short videos is really important too. I'll give you an example. When I was teaching in South Korea, we were working on like conversation practice. So I'd show them like a clip of a student asking, how much is this item them at a grocery store. And then after that, I'd ask my students, okay, let's practice. How do we say, what is this or how much is this? So that's really good to know. Great.
Yeah.
Very much, McKenna. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's good that we've had a lot of these ideas in common too. Actually, I like that. I might use that idea for a future lesson where we're going to be using that vocabulary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's really important because even before I moved to Mexico, I had to really learn how to say cuánto cuesta, like how much is this?
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't want to just go to a market and not know anything at all and just be completely starstruck. So it's nice to have that practice and then allow you to be able to pause it and practice speaking too. Great,
yeah.
Well, what kind of age are your students in general? Because you said business English, so it's more advanced English,
my
right?
students, well, when I was in Gran Canaria, they were as young as 3 until as old as about 16. So literally everybody. So
Interesting.
I teach from 2nd grade to the 1st of ESO. So from 7 years old to about 12 or 13 or so.
Mm-hmm. And you also teach English online with, you said iTutor group, correct?
Tutor ABC, yeah.
Oh, Tutor ABC, I apologize. Yeah, Tutor ABC. And how old are the students that you're teaching?
Again, similar ages. So the children anywhere from 6 to high school. And then with the adults, I've had students, I've got a lot of college students who want to study abroad. I've also had students, my parents' age, in their 60s, who just really love English and want to learn. I've even had a lot of parents who are taking the classes because they want to learn with their children, which I think is actually really sweet.
Yeah, I think that's good. The fact that you have that wide variety of speaking to people who really want to learn English, especially business professionals too. I think they need to really learn English for their interviews and be able to really excel within their role if they're going to be speaking English at work. Very cool.
Yeah. And I love talking to the students who want to study abroad just because I did that. And I can relate to it. And actually, I met a student who was going to study abroad in my state of Michigan. And I was super excited to hear that because you don't hear a lot of people wanting to go to Michigan to study abroad because we have 6-month winters and months without the sun and minus 40-degree wind. So it's not really an attraction, but again, just the fact that someone was interested and someone knew that it exists, it made me super excited. So yeah, it's really cool. And then with the kids too, they're adorable. Again, for them, I love seeing how excited they get to learn. And plus, again, the fact that it is online, you have all these really fun tools that they can use. And for the kinesthetic learners, the fact that they can interact with the classroom too is really good. And you can still do games like charades as well. So yeah, I think it's great because when I was younger, I would have loved to have the opportunity to speak with native Spanish speakers so easily because I didn't have that. In fact, the first time I really spoke with, besides my professors at school, the first time I spoke with native speakers in Spanish was in Argentina. And it's an experience to talk with a native speaker the first time. I couldn't understand anything the first month. And I always got 4.0s in my Spanish classes. I could write about Cervantes and El Cid. I could write amazing essays, but then when it came to speaking, it's I had to relearn again. So I really, think it's great that these kids, or people in general all over the world can learn whatever language they want to, just through their computers or their phones. I would have loved that experience as a kid. So, but at least I can offer that to people now.
That's true. So let's flip the script. Since you said you did study abroad in Argentina, I'm just curious, why Argentina out of all places? You could go to Spain, go to Chile, go to Mexico. So what really draw you to choosing Argentina as a study abroad location?
Yeah, good question. Well, originally I was thinking about Mexico, but I think my university ended up pulling that program for some reason. And originally I was going to go to Segovia, Spain for 6 weeks because my original major was to be a Spanish teacher for high school. And then after my first education class, and I was learning about the system, and this is even before I'd gone anywhere abroad besides Canada, which Canada, Michigan's literally right next to Canada. It doesn't feel like going abroad, even though you're in a different country. So, but anyway, I realized basically in order to get a higher salary, I have to be in one place for like 25 years. And even then, I knew I wanted to be abroad. I knew I wanted to travel the world. And I was thinking, I don't know if this is going to work. And so I looked into teaching ESL, and I realized that was a possibility where I could teach and I could travel the world. So I could do what I love and help other people. And I talked to some people at my university about programs, and I was thinking about Spain against Segovia because it was a 6-week program. But then one of my professors, who's actually from Poland, and she is one of the best professors I've ever had. She pushed me so hard, but she really, really opened my mind in so many ways. And she studied abroad in Chile. And my university didn't have a program for Chile, but they have one for Argentina. And she's like, McKenna, go to Argentina. You know, they love people from the United States. It's not as expensive as Spain. You know, it's beautiful. And I talked to a few girls who did the program. Everyone said wonderful things about it. And plus the good thing was, because Argentina's below the equator, their semesters were from March to June. So basically for like 2.5 months, I was able to only work, save money so I can go. And then I went, and I really liked how I did something unique, because most people I talked to haven't studied abroad, and my city was Rosario, and it wasn't even Buenos Aires. So I really got immersed into the culture. And then I made the decision, which my parents still haven't forgiven me for, and I decided to stay for 2 more months and travel by myself. And I had never been away from them for more than a week. But it was the best thing I ever did for myself, because I grew a lot as a person. And then I realized that living abroad and teaching and having a successful life was possible. And that could be, again, another story for another podcast episode, but that's really what started, because then I learned about different programs where you can teach abroad, and that's really what started all of this. So that's like the short version of me going to Argentina. And if any of you haven't been, I recommend you go. Argentina is beautiful. It's a huge country. There's so much to visit. Rosario is amazing. It has kind of like a European vibe as well. Same with Cordoba. That's my favorite city in Argentina. There's the wine in Mendoza. There's the mountains in Salta in the north. You got Patagonia. Like, there's so much you can see. So again, definitely go if you can.
That's awesome. So how old were you when you went to Argentina?
I was a baby. I was 22. I had
you're
no
22 years
idea what I
old.
was doing, but you know, I figured it out. So, because this is the first time I had ever lived away from my parents. This is the first time I used public transportation. But I figured it out, and I grew up a lot.
That's incredible. And I can also relate to as well, because like once like you leave your comfort zone, you realize that like you have all this potential that you feel like at the time like you may not know, but it's a matter of just like connecting with other expats and to be able to like really tell yourself like, hey, I'm here by myself. I got to figure this out. And different language. I'm gonna have to use Google Translate. I'm gonna have to learn the language through a language exchange. So that's good to know. So the Spanish in Argentina is super different compared to Spain, because you have Castellano and Madrid, and then you have like in Argentina they use like vos. So for example, they'll say like ¿Cómo estás vos? And vos is like vosotros, which is like you all. Did you learn Argentinian Spanish before you moved to Argentina?
No. In fact, this is probably the easiest part. They have so many different words I had to relearn. Like fresa is frutilla, and they say
what is it? Sorry?
Frutilla. They say the WL like a SH, like instead of calle, it's calle. And I still kind of use that in Spanish to this day. I think remera is dress or shirt. I can't quite remember, but I remember one day, like I was in class, and my friends and I were like, every time we try to go shopping, like there's all these different words that we learned in the United States, and we just had a list of like words for shopping, because there was all these really gorgeous clothes there, but we didn't know how to buy them because everything we learned, like, so it was challenging. But when I went to Chile, which I've been told is even more challenging, what I really appreciated was, since they knew I was a foreigner learning Spanish, either they would speak slower and like not use as many, local expressions, or if they used it, they would explain it to me what it meant. So, and also I didn't have Google Translate. I had a brick phone. I didn't have a smartphone. I had paper maps. I don't know how I survived. So I somehow managed to make it through. But
Mhm.
again, like I learned just like people in general are really nice and will help you. Most of the world, I believe, like has a good heart. And it really just helped me have a lot of faith in people because I was always super shy growing up and I was super afraid to speak out and use my voice. So teaching really and helping students be able to, use their voices, whether it's, in-person classes, using their voices to express themselves through various ways of technology, like, the TikToks or, games like the groups that I've mentioned. It's been one of big passion of mine too.
That's amazing. So my question for you is like, so since you did study abroad in Argentina, do you feel like it led you to like going to teach English abroad in Colombia, or was there like another driving factor that like led you to teaching English abroad in Colombia?
Yeah, interesting story. So I got back in August and then I had school in September. And my program had like this like post study abroad meeting just for us to talk about experiences, deal with reverse culture shock. And they gave us a list of like, if you want to go abroad again, here are ways to do it. One of them is volunteering. And the first thing there was this program called World Teach. And they don't have programs to go overseas at the moment, but at the time they had all these programs to Colombia, Ecuador, Panama. And I took a course on Colombian literature in university with a Polish professor, actually. And I wanted to go to the cities that I learned about. For example, I had learned about Medellin, Cartagena, Bogota, and I really wanted to see those in person. And when I was in Argentina, I met Colombians and I was like, oh my God, your Spanish is so much easier to understand. Why didn't I go there first? So I went to Colombia and it was much easier to understand until you go to the coast. It's a little bit more challenging, but in the interior, it's easier. And plus at the time, this was in 2013. So basically since 2008, I had been watching people with bachelor's and master degrees work in Starbucks as waiters and bartenders because there were no jobs available. Michigan got hit really, really hard by the recession. And even having like my retail job in college, I saw as a blessing because so many people around me were in a lot of debt, not having jobs or waiting years to get a job that had like very minimal, not good benefits, and it was often not in their field. And I thought, I have nothing to lose. I don't have this career behind me. I'm young. I'm free. I can go wherever I want to go. And I figured if there's any time to go abroad to volunteer for a year, even if I'm not making money, like why not? And plus I figured at the time I was thinking when I go back to the US, I'll have a really unique experience, to show for it. And that'll make me stand out among all the thousands of other, liberal arts majors. But then I got offered a job in Colombia and I ended up staying for a couple more years. So that's kind of how that happened.
That's awesome. So I'm curious. So like you lived in Argentina for study abroad and then you lived in Colombia. Were there any cultural differences or like many cultural similarities between Argentina and Colombia, even though the dialect is different, but it might be similar, who knows, with the food. So can you tell us more? I'd like to hear.
Yeah, there's a lot of differences. First, the language, there's a lot of different Colombian words. Like autobus, they say buseta. I don't think they say that in Argentina. I think in Argentina it's autobus. And like in Argentina and Colombia, people are both very, very friendly. So it's very easy to make friends, which again, as a shy person, was really, really helpful for me because sometimes it felt like all I did was walk into a room and everyone wanted to be my friend. And it didn't feel like the US where you have to like show off, how much money you make or how prestigious your job is, at least how it felt sometimes, because we were talking a few days ago how it can just be really competitive, especially when you're an adult. When it's university, it's different, but as an adult, it can be more challenging. But in Colombia, like I just showed up and people wanted to be my friend and it was great. Let's see, I would say it's hard to, there are cultural differences, but I think for Argentina, it was more of a shock to me because it was my first time in a Spanish speaking environment. and it was my first time being really far away from the US. So when I think about Argentina, the shock I feel more is that more so like that stands out more to me than like a lot of cultural shock. I will say the culture shock I dealt with in Colombia was a bit stronger. Like for example, having to maybe wait a bit longer for things, or for example, people walking, like I'm used to walking really fast. People walk slower. So like that, getting used to that. People, again, just not having to plan everything, which I really liked. And just learning to be more go with the flow because I'm so used to planning everything to the last detail. And I learned that sometimes it's okay just to go with the flow. And that really helped me relax a bit more. So, but again, it's hard to say. They are very different, but again, it's hard to say just because my experience and like the person I was very different from 22 and 24.
So that's incredible. Awesome.
So how you compare now all Argentina, Colombia, and now Spain?
You know what's interesting about Spain is I felt culture shock, but not compared to the US. It was compared to Colombia. And I didn't feel it until after a year of being in Spain. Because when I first got here, most of the people I was hanging out with were either the other people in a group from the US or other Colombians or people from Mexico. So I didn't really feel, and plus when I would go to these businesses to teach English, I didn't really feel a lot of, the Spanish culture shock. But then when all of my friends left, because of the pandemic and I was here all by myself, and I figured, it'll be easy to make friends. But during the pandemic, it was a lot harder because people in general were more isolated. And, again, it was and even just the way people communicated was different. And I realized I kept comparing my experience here to Spain. I mean, not to Spain, to Colombia. And that I thought was interesting because Colombia is not where I'm from. I'm from the US, but I kept falling back on Colombia. So it's interesting how that's become a part of me now in a way, even though I'm not from there.
That's true.
But yeah, I will say Spain is where I've really grown as a professional because my original plan was just a year. And then I found out, other ways I could stay here, teach English. And then I did a master's degree finally after like 10 years of planning on it. And I teach online now, and I've achieved more things that I ever thought was possible going abroad. And I know things are just getting better too. So Spain is really about again, growing as a person and myself, becoming more confident and growing a lot as a professional too.
That's true. Do you feel like you want to settle in Spain? Like, do you feel like this is your home? Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
I don't know where yet because I spent 2 years in Madrid, 2 years in Gran Canaria. I'm in Valencia now. I love Valencia. The only thing is it's really, really hot, humid, and I do not like humidity. So Gran Canaria was beautiful for 2 years, although after 2 years, I missed continents. I'm happy to be back in a continent now where I can just take a train places. But I will always love my time I spent. I had an apartment, actually Nicole visited me twice. I had an apartment with a view of the ocean and the mountains. And the beach was 4 minutes away from where I lived. It was a dream. And I will always treasure that time. But again, I don't know where I will settle in Spain, but I do want to settle here just because I feel really good here. I feel really confident. I feel really safe and secure within myself. And again, I've grown a lot, and it's been far from easy. I think anytime you uproot yourself and try to basically start from scratch anywhere, whether it's in a different country or even in a different city or even in the same city, it's difficult. But every single moment I felt purpose. And again, just here, I feel really at home. My heart feels really happy here. I hope that doesn't sound cheesy. It's
yeah. Spain has a special feeling for people. I noticed. It's not only you. It's I know a lot of other people too, who left their home countries and they moved to Spain, and they're just happier. They realize the quality of life is a lot better. You don't make as much money as USA or Canada, but you're also ultimately more happier, and you feel more fulfilled, and you're actually able to to live life, instead of just like surviving and wishing your days away at work and like, oh, I don't want to work at this job, but I have to, it pays bills. So yeah, totally understand. I feel the same exact way too as well. Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool.
I was only one night in Valencia, so, but I liked it too. There's also, I worked with someone. Oh no, I worked actually with the International University of Valencia in a project. So that was also,
Wow.
yeah.
Really
Okay, we're coming to an end. So you want to say something to close it out? I mean, you had an interesting journey. So you went from
Thank
Michigan to Argentina, Colombia, now in Spain. So
Thank
thank you for sharing this. And I mean, that might inspire also other people to do the same and go out of themselves. As what you mentioned, you grow, you saw something else, you had to take care of yourself, even without a smartphone.
Oh, I was gonna ask you a question. Sorry. Okay, if you could tell us like 3 life lessons you've learned from moving out of Michigan, you know, to Spain, what are some 3 things that you've learned that like you really keep to yourself and you always talk about it as well with other people or family?
The 3 life lessons. There are so many, so it's hard to narrow it down to 3.
Okay,
I
maybe
would say the first though is you will never regret going after your dreams. I think so many people.
Number 1, never regret.
Yeah.
Okay, number 2.
Number 2 is the world is not as scary as you think it is. It's much more manageable than you think.
Interesting.
It's true.
Okay, but number 3, you don't comment on that, okay? Just mention it.
All right, and number 3, keep fighting for your dreams because eventually they will come true, even if it's in the most unexpected way that you imagine happening.
Wow.
Beautiful. You're inspiring. Yeah. Wow.
Okay, so we didn't have time for this other thing, but that's okay, because it was also maybe not the right fit for you, because it's more for a school administrator and you're more a teacher, from what I understand now. So, great. Nicole, you have a final question? You have 2 minutes.
Let's see here. Oh yeah, okay, tell us. What are some of your favorite places you visited in Spain? Or some places that like people may not know of, but you can be able to tell people more about it.
Yeah, there's one in the north of Spain. I think it's called, like the pronunciation, I'm not very good. It's called Ondarribia. And it's literally right next to the border of France. So if you go to San Sebastian, you can take a train, and it's so gorgeous, it's so colorful and pretty. Wow. And I'm surprised more people don't know about it. Another place in Gran Canaria is a place called Tejeda. It's up in the mountains, and it's, if you take a bus, it's like 2.5 hours away. Yep. But it has these gorgeous views of the mountains. Sometimes I think you can see the ocean from there, if not from one of the towns nearby. And I was in Pamplona for this past weekend, not for the running of the bulls, but I did go. But it was like, it was a lot of fun. It was just a really good, yeah. So I liked the heat. I mean, a relief from the humidity and heat. So I was really happy to be cold in the morning after like 2 months in Valencia of waking up and like with the fan on full blast and still suffering. So, but it was nice.
That sounds amazing. I was only in Valencia for 1 day, you know, just like Mickey too as well. I went for Las Fallas, but Las Fallas was incredible. Probably one of the most amazing things I've experienced so far in Spain. And I like talked about it, and I also educated some people about it because I didn't know what Las Fallas was until like my students told me about it. I was like, where's Las Fallas? I hear about Las Fallas. So yeah, absolutely incredible.
I'm so excited. The only thing I'm not excited about is like, I'm not going to be able to sleep during those days because I'm not in the center of the city, but I'm near. So I'm going to hear fireworks for I don't know how long.
Yeah, that's true. You're right. Very cool.
Okay. Thank you, ladies. And Yeah, so for you, your day started, Nicole, and we done with the day. See?
Yeah, I know it's 1 p.m.
Fun's done.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, listeners. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Bye bye. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.